Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the High Ground Podcast. I'm really excited. We are going to dive deep into representation from the LGBTQ community, and I'm excited because there's a lot for me to learn on this. So we're going to jump right into it right now on the High Ground. Hello and welcome everybody to the High Ground. I'm really excited because we have three brand new guests, first timers on here, and we have a returning favorite with always Fern. But yeah, I'm going to start by kind of going around, and we'll ask the first questions of, who are you, where can we find you, and your awesome stuff. And today I'll be asking, if you could have any job in Star Wars or be part of any faction, right? You could be a smuggler, a bounty hunter, Mandalorian, you could be High Republic, you could be whatever you want. What faction are you going to be? And who's your ride or die? Who's your partner in crime in all you're doing? And I'll go to Jess first.
Okay, so hi, I'm Jess. You can find me on TikTok and Twitter at Kawaii Jessio. And I had such a hard time picking what I'd want to be in Star Wars, job wise, because of course Jedi are really cool, and I've been really into the High Republic lately, so I was like, wow.
As you should.
Yeah. But I think in the end I'm gonna go with, I want to be part of the Chiss expansionary defense fleet.
Okay.
I'm a big fan of Thrawn and the Thrawn books, so, and my ride or die is Eli Vanto, so yeah.
Yes. I was like, there's only two answers to that, and it's Eli Vanto or Admiral Ar'alani. Both are sorry, not to go all gatekeepery, but those are my ride or dies. Also, real quick, we got Brooke saying, where'd it go? Those are some cool Commander Cody earrings. I just always got to shout out Brooke B. Dazzler in the chat with Far Far Away Factory. Comes out with the best stuff. Brooke is just the best, and go check out her and her stuff. How about you, Noah?
So I'm Noah. You can find me on pretty much everywhere, just at the Jewish Jedi. I did also think a lot about this because I'm getting right into the High Republic. I'm watching our other co-host Mel do their speed run of the entire series in 2 days. And I am enamored with the idea of being like a Jedi wayfinder, I think was the phrase they used. I will gladly be a Jedi and explore the galaxy. Sign me up right now. I know this doesn't really work in canon, but if I could hang out from one person from the High Republic, it would be Bell, my beloved. I would he's fantastic. That said, if I could make this work and just break canon, Eli Vanto, please come hang out with me. I would have a good time with that.
I approve. Yeah, but break time and space. It's all connected through the Force. It don't matter. Awesome. I love it. How about you, Becca?
Hello, my name is Becca. You can find me on TikTok at Becca Shea. The spelling is BeckAhShaye because people always spell my first name and my middle name wrong. If I could be anything in the Star Wars universe, I think I would be a Jedi during the High Republic, because I just feel like they are the embodiment of what Jedi should be. I've only read Light of the Jedi so far because I took a break and I'm reading Thrawn Alliances right now, but when I read that book, I was like, wait, this is perfect, and this is everything that I want. And Lauren Greatstorm, I want him to be my ride or die, my partner. I don't care. If he was my teacher, I would not want to leave the Jedi Order.
I love it. Yeah, and Charles Soule recently made a post saying on Twitter saying, I'm excited to write more for Loden. And then I said, I would like some details, sir. But no, I completely agree with that. And just like Star Wars lore is saying, Fern, Third, last but not least.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so predictable. You guys probably already know. I would have to be a Jedi. Firstly, hi, I'm Fern, at always Fern on TikTok. And I am sort of the resident Jedi apologist, Jedi of all eras. But I am also super enamored with the High Republic era. And I think I would have to be something adjacent to a Jedi archivist. I just want to be like the Jedi who's sitting in the library reading books all day and writing essays. Maybe I teach a few classes. I teach the Jedi Padawan space Shakespeare class. I don't know. Anyway, I think that my ride or die would have to be Wreath Silas. I considered for a moment maybe doing something less predictable, but I know deep in my heart that Wreath is always going to be my fantasy partner in crime.
Yeah, no, Wreath is of the good boys. He's my favorite of the goodest good boys.
I do love the idea of Fern in their Jocasta Nu era, just like several hundred years prior to when she's running around the temple.
Exactly. Like, this is all I want. I do appreciate the energy of Jocasta Nu just continuing to be a librarian during a war. I think that that's beautiful. And like, if that's also an option, I will take it.
Yeah, I mean, there were Jedi who were just like, I don't want to fight. Like, this isn't what we're supposed to be doing. And what's funny, now that you say it, is that happened with Jedi Master, what's his name? The guy, Prosit Dibs. He ended up becoming the 10th brother. But like, as his punishment, I guess, they made him work in the library. So I'm just curious, like, what that era was like with Jocasta Nu, and he's like, I hate these goddamn Jedi, and she's just like, yeah, whatever, just organize. And he's like, I'm blind.
Didn't they also make Ahsoka work in the library for a bit as punishment?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, they had that arc about that in the Clone Wars too. And she's like, I hate library duty. And I was like, I would kill to do that. Are you kidding me?
I can't believe that's like the standard Jedi punishment. Like, you do something, you mess up, you will be shelving books for about 2 to 3 weeks.
I do love in any fantasy universe when they're like, the punishment is you have to do homework. And they're like, darn. And I'm like, you're complaining about your galactic space war history homework. This is the issue you have today.
That's like a real thing from my life, where my parents would be like, all right, go to your room. I'm like, okay. Like, oh,
Don't
no.
have to tell me twice.
Like, I'm the guy that used to actually volunteer to write my friends' essays and stuff for school, because I was like, I couldn't pick a topic, so I wrote mine, but I kind of want to write the other ones. Can I write yours? Like, that was me. Oh, also we got Ollie Fresh in chat, said the whole squad. I'm sorry, I couldn't have. I have to pick and choose. I'm gonna have everyone on eventually, and I'm really trying here. So, Neepy saying let's go. X-Core Gamer Skills is here. A little late. Don't worry about that. X-Core Gamer Skills is on Conspiracy Cantina podcast, which is a lot of fun. I was on there a week ago, something like that. So you can always check them out as well. But yeah, I mean, those are all awesome answers. Eli Vanto, I do love him, and I need more, and it's frustrating knowing, as much as I love getting Thrawn's backstory, but I'm like, these are more books before I can find out more about what happens to Eli Vanto in the future, and I don't know, I'm not super okay with that. All right, so let's go with how did you guys get into Star Wars, and what actually made you kind of fall in love with the universe? I'll go to Noah first.
So I was a child when the prequels were coming out, so that was my like introduction to Star Wars, which I feel like is a really interesting starting point, because when I was a kid, I actually didn't know that like the originals had come out decades before the prequels. So I was like, wow, the CGI got really bad over like the year between these movies. But I stayed away from it for a while. I think the thing that made me like fall in love with Star Wars was probably the Clone Wars TV show, which was coming out when I was like, I think like 8, 9, and 10, like around that area. But it was so in depth of the Star Wars universe and had such like this great cast of characters that I was like, I needed to know more about these people. And that I think is where my obsession with Star Wars that pervades to this day sort of started out. I love that show so much. I have rewatched it multiple times.
Oh yeah, no, it's actually like I actually don't like having it playing in the background because both my wife and I will end up not getting anything done. So we have to like have something else. So we have like The Office playing because it's less captivating.
It's one of those shows that I can't like casually watch. I can't be like, I'm going to put it on and do dishes. And like, no, we have to sit down. We have to be prepared to interact with what's happening on screen right now.
Especially if Clovis comes on, then I get angry and I break dishes.
Get him out of here.
How about you, Becca? How'd you get into Star Wars and what made you fall in love?
So this will make sense when I say I was a huge Supernatural fan, and I was in love with the actress Emily Swallow, and she plays the armor in The Mandalorian. And I was like, I just want to support her. That's all I want. Like, I will follow her wherever she goes. And so I started watching The Mandalorian, and I was like, wait, Star Wars is actually like, if this is what it is, it's really good. And then I started watching it, and I was traumatized by Rogue One. I was like, no, wait, I really like this. But what made it captivating to me was just the way that in The Mandalorian, how the story was told, coming from someone who did not know. Really, all I knew was Darth Vader was Luke's father and that Yoda was a little green guy walking around. Like, I didn't know anything, but it still like was so interesting in the way that the story was told. I was like, we love found family. We love good storytelling, and everything about it was just perfect to me.
I love it. I always, that's why I love finding out when people join in, because it means something different depending on when you jumped in, and it's, I know, it's just refreshing, you know. How about you, Fern?
So I grew up in a household where there were people who liked Star Wars, namely my dad and my brother. So I was like aware of Star Wars. I had seen the movies, but I would not have called myself a Star Wars fan until I was about 12 years old, and I found in my brother's room the fourth book in the Jedi Apprentice series by Jude Watson. I guess I was just bored that day, or I think that was a time in my life where I would basically read anything that found its way into my hands, even if I didn't particularly care about the book itself. And in this book, Obi-Wan Kenobi is 12 years old, turning 13. And I was like, that's me. And I just like, I loved it. They're really short reads. So I read that book really quickly. And then it was just a matter of going to the library and reading as much of the series as I could, and the Jedi Quest and Last of the Jedi stuff. And then from there, I watched the Clone Wars, and I started reading other Star Wars books, and I went back and watched I'd seen the prequels, but like actually watched and paid attention. And Star Wars just became a really, really big part of my life and a big part of my friendships.
That's awesome. And I always say the books are the best part of Star Wars.
Yeah.
You know, to come at me. And I have Will Force King says, "Oh no, not my bedroom with all my books, TV, video games. I want to distract myself." Yeah, that's what those weird punishments were like. I don't know what he was trying to do. Shout out, thank you, Car2D2. I appreciate all of you guys. And any donations. It's not necessary, but I love all the support. And Jess, last but not least, how about you? How did you find yourself in this world?
Okay, so I started with the sequels actually, but I didn't actually see The Force Awakens in theater, because before that I'd never really been interested in Star Wars, mainly because as a kid I saw Jar Jar Binks and Darth Maul and was like, no thanks, I don't know what that is, but I don't want any part of that. But then I watched the sequels and the other movies and was like, oh yeah, this is fun. But last year near the end of the year, so like December, with the Mandalorian season 2, because I had watched season 1 also when it was coming out, I just fell backwards into the rabbit hole that was like Star Wars, because I was like, wow, this is really good. Let's watch Clone Wars and let's watch Rebels now. And I just fell in love with the universe, I guess. And then I met all these like fun people on TikTok who were like Star Wars like content creators, and I was like, yeah, this is actually really nice and really fun.
Yeah, it's been amazing. Like, especially because I didn't know, as an introverted person myself, I had no thoughts to actually making real friends on the internet before TikTok. Like, that was not a thing I would ever want to do. I don't know. And now I get to see all of my mutuals and stuff going to Disneyland together and making all this content together, and I'm like, this is just crazy. So yeah, I need to catch up with all y'all. Um, but it's awesome, and I especially love that all this with all the content coming out. It's like the best time, and there's so many new people joining this fandom, and it's just, I don't know, it's just the best. We're keeping it fresh, so it never goes stale and stuff like that. And I think representation is going to be a big part of keeping that that freshness. Um, Also, shout out to Haley, Grilly Coffee Works. Follow her because she's awesome. Saying internet friendships. Saint Pat designed my logo, and Saint Pat is just the best. Um, yeah, this is the best community by far, no question. But speaking of representation, why is it important? We'll start with like a simple question like that, and then we'll just kind of expand on it. Um, we'll go to Becca first.
For me, representation is important. Like, good representation is important because we should want to see ourselves in the characters that we like. Because in media in general, it's just the majority is going to be cis het, which is cisgender heterosexual. And if there is any form of, like, I know because I'm a lesbian, so like I'll see like lesbian representation and it's highly sexualized. So I like to see like proper representation that accurately portrays me. And I know for like younger kids, it's good for them to see, because they might be questioning their gender identity or their sexuality or something. And if they see a character that is showing how they're feeling, that'll mean a lot to them, because I didn't get that growing up. It was all what people considered the norm. So representation is just important in general because we want to see ourselves on screen. And I know that sometimes when you ask for representation, people get upset, but I don't think it's too much to ask to say, hey, can we get some more gay characters in Star Wars? Because there's not a lot of gay characters in Star Wars.
Yeah, no, I mean, all great points, and sounds reasonable to me. I don't know. How about you, Fern?
Yeah, this is something I think about a lot because in general, I don't believe that like a character has to be relatable to be compelling. I don't need to relate to their experiences to find them, interesting and worthwhile. But then I also think about when I was a kid and I was raised in a family where I knew it was perfectly okay to be queer. And also I was deeply afraid that I was going to be queer when I grew up. I thought that was going to be a bad thing, not because my parents were going to reject me. Like, I didn't fear for myself. Like, I don't think I feared for myself on a physical level, but I knew that it was not normal, at least not to the kids I went to school with, at least not, in the movies I saw on TV. And I think so much of that came from the fact that every movie I ever watched, the girl got a boyfriend at the end. The happy ending was a wedding. And I was just really I remember being 12 years old about the same time I got into Star Wars, thinking I don't think I can do that. And it felt like a very horrible realization at the time. And so then I think seeing queer experiences and queer identity in the shows and books and movies that I really loved was, for me, a first step into realizing this is not something I need to dread. This is not something I need to be afraid of. This can be a really positive and beautiful thing. And so at the end of the day, that's why it's so important for me now, is because I think there are kids out there having that same experience. And I hope that they can look around at just the things they're interested in and see themselves and see their experiences and think this is going to be okay, actually.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, that's beautiful. And was there was a cat back there that was just applauding everyone.
Yeah,
So.
she's really mad that my door is closed, but
No, that's it's all great points. I well, I'll wait to share my experience at the end. I'm not part of the community, but my sister is, and I guess I'll just share it now. And I think that um, I don't think my family was ready for it at the time. My sister's a few years older than me, and I didn't care myself. I was not the least bit surprised at all. I was like, "Oh, you're finally gonna say it, cool." But since there's so little of it in our media in general, that's what normalizes a lot of things. People don't realize that a lot of the normalization comes from the media that are always consuming. There's people that are uncomfortable with black people, for instance, but that's because the only media they've ever consumed is the only place they've ever interacted with a black character, and there've always been crooks and stuff. So uh, that's a big part of it. And I don't know. I always wonder because my sister is literally the most talented human I've ever met, and her life has gone some really bad places now, and I always wonder what could have been different. Um, Not that it's anyone's fault, not that she wasn't loved or anything like that, and she wasn't expelled or anything horrible, but our family just didn't understand. And so that's one of the things is I genuinely want to understand and hear the perspective. So I appreciate hearing all this stuff. It's amazing to me. How about you, Jess?
Well, like Becca and Fern were saying, I do think having more representation just like slowly will normalize them more in society and media. Because, sorry, I'm having trouble like formulating my thoughts right now or articulating them. But because
Yeah. Take your time, or if you want me to come back to you, I can. I'm either way.
Yeah, come back to me in a second. Hold on.
All right, I'll come back to you after Noah. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Fern, you and I have very similar thoughts on this, which we've talked about before. But like you said, this thing that was like, I don't need to relate to a character's experiences to find them compelling, which I do think is very true. But I can also remember the first time like seeing a character and like they were queer and being like, oh, this is what that feels like to relate to somebody that I'm seeing on screen. Because so often I think that when you don't see yourself represented, it's not even like a normalizing it for yourself thing. It's just sort of like a click goes off where you're like, I am a person and other people can experience the things that I experience, and they can understand that perspective and that story. And I think that growing up, almost never seeing that, because the only way that like Becca, you mentioned that like lesbian relationships are always hypersexualized. I am also so tired of seeing like gay men on screen and their only trait is that they're like very loud. And I'm like, oh, great. Thanks, guys. I'm glad we're comic relief for the seventh movie in a row. But I think for me, the reason I want better representation is for younger kids, because I think I would have had an easier time not understanding myself, because when I knew, I knew. And I do remember I was in like fifth grade and I literally was like, oh, crap. Like, I was like, great. I can't get around this anymore. But I think if I'd been able to see it other places, and I think the other thing about queer representation especially is that we look for it in like every available character. Like even a hint that this character might be anywhere in the queer community, you're like, this is the one. This is the character I'm going to fix it on for 8 straight years. And I'm okay with that, but I would love for it to be something more concrete than like grasping at straws essentially to try and put yourself in the media that you're seeing. And I think that if it were more widespread, and if they were more positive stories, I think that kids especially would have an easier time sort of being okay with themselves, sort of. Especially because queer stories, when they are told, are most often told by straight people. and they're most often told about stories that are totally divorced from us. Like I don't want to see another movie about gay people in the AIDS crisis. I just don't. I've seen enough of those. I want to see us in space, and I want to see us in like wizard stories. Like there are levels to that. There's a multiplicity of queer existence, and I want representation to bring that forward in a way that isn't wrapped around either hypersexuality or tragedy. That'd be super cool if we could get like either of those things.
Splash Daddy here says it beautifully. Everyone is multidimensional, and that's the thing I really wish that people would understand. Like I hear comments tossed out about lazy writing. To me, the only lazy writing is leaning into tropes that you are not willing to research those people that you are using a trope for. That's the only form of lazy writing, because that is literally, I didn't want to do the work, so I'm writing this trope so it'll be easily digestible. And I see that happen a lot, like you said, the hypersexualization, and it's a horrible thing because it lends itself towards, I don't know, deviancy, which is not really a thing, but it's like a weird type of branding that people do. I don't know. I don't know. Thank you, Ace Bronx. I appreciate you. Sir. But how about you, Jess? You have any thoughts?
It's hard because like everyone has basically said a lot of what I was like thinking or feeling. So I don't know what to say that could like add on besides agreeing with Noah that it's really tiring to see just queer representation as like stereotype and tragedy all the time, because we're just more than that, and we're like normal people too. Mm-hmm. So be nice if representation became more normalized, and just putting people who happen to be queer in Star Wars or other fantasy and fun things.
Yeah, and I completely agree. I don't know if any of you guys have read the Aftermath books. Anyone? No? Okay. So the character Sinjir Las Velas in that book he's gay, and he's one of the coolest characters in any of the Star Wars books, because he's just a guy that was a former ISB agent who just happens to be gay, and he just does all these things. Now, I did feel it was a little ham-fisted how they presented him as gay, because he literally comes out and he says, "I'm gay," and you're like, "Oh, okay, cool." Like someone hit on him, and he's just like, you're like, "All right, okay, that's cool," but like, I don't know. But the first book in that series is not great, but the series actually gets really good. And if you get into the second and third book, phenomenal character, highly recommend. But as you guys were saying, and as Melvin Culpa here is saying, the writer's room needs to be as diverse as the cast of the story, which should also be as diverse as the audience to the story. And I think that's the most important. Stairs and Comac. Comac's appreciative eyebrow raise. I was like, "Ooh, we're doing that? Okay." What is an example of a good what does good representation mean, and what is an example of that you guys can think of? Fern?
It's such a hard question, because I think my answer, my instinct is to say, like, one character cannot be good representation on their own. The only thing that can be good representation are enough characters to like sufficiently embody what it means to have this identity. And obviously my experience as like a person who identifies as a lesbian is going to be different from Becca's experience with that same identity and that same label. These are words that are useful to an extent, but they're not going to explain everything about, you know, what it is to have this identity. I think in general, like if you are going to look at one character and say, are they good representation or not? are they a person? Are they a fully developed person? And for me, and I think everyone's going to have like a different take on this, but for me, there's this sort of caveat of, and is queer identity or queer experience like relevant to who they are in some way? So a character who is queer, but like that's not necessarily a part of their, I want to be really careful here because I might not be saying what I actually mean, but like, for me, what is really good positive queer representation is a queer character whose queerness informs who they are as a person, how they see the world, how they interact with people, you know, the relationships they have. And that's because that's been my experience. So even, you know, when I am not in a relationship, even when I, you know, even if I don't currently have a crush on someone, my life and my relationships are influenced by and impacted by the fact that I'm queer. And so that is something that like for me feels necessary for good queer representation. And I think I would feel differently if we had like just as many queer characters in Star Wars as there are straight characters. But because we don't, or any show, you know, fill in the blank, because we don't, that still feels really necessary to me.
Yeah, no, that's I like that a lot. And it's so hard to translate because it makes me think of because obviously I'm more familiar with racial with it on a racial level, so I translate it as like Cisco Ramon on The Flash, where he's Mexican and that's how he sees the world, and with his family he speaks Spanish and all this stuff. But that's not what he is. What he is an engineer and a scientist and stuff, and that like it doesn't come up unless it's one of those related things, but it does inform how he sees it. You know, that's kind of the example that I'm thinking in my mind. Also have Brian Mack. Thank you so much. And then sorry to throw something from left field out at you, but I'm curious because Will Forrest King asks, what's everyone's thoughts on straight characters portraying roles of LGBTQ characters, um, and your thoughts on that. Um, did you have any further thoughts on that, Fern?
For me, it's one of those situations where like I don't care particularly personally. My question might be why, like why was this person selected? Why is the belief in the, you know, cast, why is the casting director's belief that like this person can best embody this experience? I think it's different when it comes to trans people. I think like trans actors should play trans roles. I also think there's a conversation to be had about outing people before they're ready in order for them to like be allowed to play a role. That's like very complicated and fraught. So my stance is I don't personally mind all that much. I just do have the question in my head of like, okay, so why this person? Is there a reason for it?
You just hit me with a bunch of stuff I've never even considered. That was crazy. How about you, Jess? What is good representation to you, and is there any examples that we have of this in Star Wars or other media? And if you want to comment on your thoughts on actors and stuff, feel free to.
It's again a hard question of like good representation because you don't want to toe the line of is this becoming a stereotype? And yeah, like Fern was saying, I do think that until it becomes more normalized, it is like good to see characters like addressing their queerness, I guess, and how they see the world. But I do hope that one day we'll be able to move away from that and be like, oh yeah, this is just normal. And they're like queer. But yeah, it's hard, like trying to think of what is good representation. I do really appreciate Sylvester in Out of the Shadows, though, as a queer character, and I think she was written pretty well. She and Jordana, their whole relationship. If you haven't read Out of the Shadows, please read Out of the Shadows.
Yes, please read it. Don't sleep on that book. Keep saying it over and over again. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, but kind of like pulling blanks on any other characters in Star Wars that would be good representation besides like one-off like lines like, oh yeah, I'm sorry, I'm gay, I'm not interested, or they looked at another character of the same sex. Go back. Yeah.
You're not wrong. It's because they didn't exist. Sylvester's the first like front runner. Everyone else, there's the sister that was going after Ahsoka, and then it's just like hit and miss, like little characters, but it's usually not a main character. Although I still maintain y'all need to read. I think everyone should read the Aftermath books. The first one is not great, but it gets really good. I promise. I always have to warn people up front. How about you? Noah?
I do love this. I feel like a lot of Star Wars media, you always have to start with like the first one of these is not amazing, but I swear it gets better as it goes on. Like I think I've explained like half of all Star Wars media with that disclaimer attached to it. Like it's always give it time. But on the topic of the discussion, I do feel like I would love to live in a world where I didn't need queer characters to be like as explicitly queer as possible. But until there's, I don't, if it's even slightly debatable, I don't trust, especially Star Wars as a fandom, to just allow that character to exist. Like things need to be so deeply explicit that they cannot look away from that. That said, I think Fern was right on the money as usual about this idea that I don't know about the label of good representation. I think I'd replace it with is this a successful representation? Because I don't always know if a character is like is good representation when I, as a gay person, relate to this character, or do they accurately display what it means to exist as a queer person? But like even that sentence is a little bit too, it lacks a lot of important intersectionality when discussing how queerness differs culture to culture and group to group. Like queerness in Jewish communities is not the same as queerness in Black communities or in Asian communities. And those ways that we're influenced and the ways that we see the world differently as a result are things you have to communicate in your characters. The complicated thing is that when we're talking about this in like a fantasy genre, how does that translate over? Like, we just don't know how people in Star Wars feel about the gays as like a collective. That's never really been super fleshed out. So like in Star Wars, why would queerness as a construct exist? Why would it change how that person interacts with their own reality? We don't know. So I'm not saying I'm like, wow, I wish there was more canon homophobia in Star Wars, which would be really funny objectively. Like, if that's what Star Wars writers heard, and they're like, gotcha, cool. But it's complicated to translate a set of experiences that are so earthbound and then move them into a universe where they don't parallel one-to-one. I think that's why, and I've listened to Fern talk about queer coding for like 8 years, but this is why coding your characters is so important, because we recognize queerness in characters at it being explicit in those same people. But that said, I would like explicitly gay people to exist in the world. But I think that's complicated. And I think it's especially complicated because not every writer that's writing a queer character is going to be a queer person. And I think asking for that, it doesn't really solve, like if you're writing a book and I want queer characters in that book, it'd be complicated to be like, only a queer author can write this story that has nothing to do with gayness but includes a gay person. Like, that's limiting, and it doesn't really solve a whole lot. It's the same conversation that we were just having about like, should a straight actor play a gay person? I think I agree with Fern completely. That's very different when it comes to trans people. Like, that's a separate issue. But there's layers to it that I find complicated to be like, is this good representation? I don't really know. I mean, I'm struggling to even think of like representation in Star Wars, and I'm like, wow, I really enjoyed that, because most of the queer characters that I like in Star Wars are just up here. They're characters that I relate to, and I have thus thrust my own queer identity on top of, rather than them actually being canonically gay. Looking at you, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Commander Cody, who are not canonically a couple, but as far as I'm concerned.
Which really quickly, I think, is why sometimes authors and writers unintentionally create more compelling queer stories than when they're trying to do it intentionally.
Yes.
Because when they're just trying to write a good story and that story really resonates with queer experiences, like, from my perspective, that's usually going to be more successful than like, I am going to create the gay Star Wars character, right?
Either that, or they're so garbage at writing women that the only compelling characters are men, and people ship them together because they're the only people that are fully fleshed out.
I am fascinated by this. This happens a lot, specifically in war movies, where male directors will write so hard to get their male characters to be like super macho men that they end up giving them these emotional moments that come off really gay. And I love that whenever it happens.
I mean, I maintain that being gay is the manliest thing you can do, but that's a weird hill I'm not willing to explain at this point in time. Julia Christine says, no, that's the same language I use to describe adaptations. Good is way more subjective than successful.
Julia, your thoughts on adaptation literally live in my brain rent free. So please continue to put them on the internet because they are amazing.
Now Brooke is a more of an Obi-Wan Django shipper. I mean, that did feel a little bit coded, that interaction of like, have you ever gone out as far as Coruscant? It's like, I don't know, that moment.
That scene in Attack of the Clones does live rent free in my mind. I think I saw that as a kid and I was like, is this?
And I also have to bring out Element 7 asks about Ketsu and Sabine and Rebels. I'm getting a lot of nods, thumbs up. Okay. just had to ask. Becca, how about you? How about your thoughts on this?
I agree with basically what everyone else was saying, that it is a very layered question of what good representation is, because for me, it's going to be different for someone else because everyone has different experiences that they'll be able to relate to or not relate to. But in general, I think, because I've noticed that sometimes writers will write a character that's queer coded but not say that they're gay until like after the show or the movie's over and be like, oh yeah, by the way, this character's gay, like they did with Lando. They're like, oh yeah, by the way, Lando's pansexual. And I'm like, why couldn't you just put that in the movie? Like, why couldn't you just have him like somehow like slide it in? Like in the Princess Leia book, Holdo, she basically said, she told Leia that liking humanoid men was limiting. And I'm like, that's the easiest way to just slide it in that you're not straight. But so when stuff like that happens, I'm like, okay, so that like the bar is so low and you didn't meet it. But also just not constantly feeding into the stereotypes of queer people or transgender people or anything like that. Like if you keep feeding into the same stereotypes over and over, it's just going to add to more problems. And it's going to add, like, people are just going to keep believing those stereotypes when in reality they're not always true.
Yeah, definitely. Man, I remember, not specifically on the pansexual part, people had such a problem with the concept that Lando might have had sex with a robot. And I'm like, people do that now. They do that right now on our Earth. You're telling me that you don't expect people with like fully realized like automaton robots would, I don't know. It just felt, it seems apropos, I guess. But yeah, no, I love it. Thank you guys so much for these, because these are like, I felt so inadequate writing questions to ask, because I'm like, I don't even know if these are the right questions to ask. I'm finding out that largely no, they're not. But but they're a great jumping off point to get to the matters at hand. So, the next question was, what is bad representation, and do we have any examples of this? Now, bad representation, I think, is probably less subjective, but I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are. And for this one, I'm going to Jess first. Do you have any thoughts on it?
Yeah. Obviously, those stereotypes are just like really effeminate gay man as one is a bad representation. And like Becca said before, authors or writers coming in later on and being like, oh yeah, this character is actually queer. Sorry it wasn't mentioned in the story, but I'm telling you now, they are queer. It's like there's a lot actually that it's a lot to unpack. But those are some at the top of my head, I guess.
Yeah, look at you, Valkyrie on Thor. Even the scene that was cut out was still pretty mild. It could have been looked at as someone crying over their friend or whatever. It wasn't made clear that it was a relationship with another Valkyrie. So yeah, I can definitely see that. How about you, Becca?
I just want to say, I think we can all agree that Tarkin is the best queer representation.
Actually, I gotta get out of here like right now.
He's actually the worst. Like the fact that it just was like my brain, because I wrote notes for this just in case if I like forgot anything, and I wrote Tarkin down here as like bad representation. Because I'm just like, why him? And people will joke. I've seen it on Twitter, on TikTok, of Tarkin like having a thing for the clones. I've seen Tarkin and Crosshair being shipped. I'm like, oh my god, this is a mess. But he is bad representation. That is the definition of bad representation. And that's all I have to say on the subject.
I was thinking about Tarkin when I was speaking, so that's really funny.
He's our gay icon.
I don't know if he's our gay icon. I know that I said I was queer earlier, but if he's in the community, I'm actually going to head out if y'all don't.
Yeah, suddenly no.
And for some reason, all right, when Tarkin talk was a thing, I was afraid for my life. I did not feel safe. I needed an adult. So you're saying that there's something wrong with someone from 1977 being coded as being let know that was gay in 2018. Noted. Also, thank you to that junk man. I appreciate you. Brick says, apparently Thor Love and Thunder will be a full-blown love story, and I really hope that it's Valkyrie and Jane Foster. Interesting. I could see that. Those guys said, oh, I always forget about that. Hopefully she's talking about Tarkin. Do forget about that. Please do. It felt wrong when I read it for the first time. I was like, that's super weird. And I don't know. How about you, Fern?
Yeah. What everyone has been saying, stereotypes, really, two-dimensional characters who are not characters. They are vehicles for like the most limited understanding of queer identity possible. I would like to bring up, and I saw Julia already did in the chat, and it was what was on my mind, the Santeca Silicon Valley husbands from Light of the Jedi. It felt a little bit like someone had Googled what are gay people like, and then wrote these two characters based on that. And they're not, they're not real characters. They are a plot point. They drive the plot further. Fine, there should be characters like that in a novel. Not every character can have like a full complex development. However, in a book that how far do I want to go with this? In a book where there is a lot of heterosexuality floating around, it felt very self-congratulatory to be like, well, look, we have these two husbands, look, they're gay, when they really were not, like, in my mind, meaningful representations of queerness at all. That being said, if the Santeca husbands are like your favorite character, I'm so sorry to slander them like this, but it didn't do it for me.
God, that's so true. I didn't even think about it like that. It's like you Google and you're like, oh, they're fancy. And like,
they're cultured, you know, they have a lot of money. They're very, they have good taste.
Yeah,
sorry, this is gonna be my albatross, I swear to God, the Santeca husbands. But the fact that they come from this like rugged, adventurous, prospecting family, but now they've become these sort of, you know, again, very cultured, very comfortable, a married couple living in this beautiful house on Naboo. And there is a line about how, like, perhaps they're, you know, rugged adventuring ancestors would be like slightly embarrassed by this, and that seems to be playing into a lot of stereotypes that just again made me a little uncomfortable.
No, it makes sense. Also, I just noticed we have a famous Obi-Wan cosplayer, Obi-Wan Kenobi, in the chat, calling out Chirrut and Baze in Rogue One. Because I do fully ship that, although it's not, you know, explicitly stated. I think I already highlighted that one, but if I'm not, Junkman, love you. And how about you, Noah?
Yeah, I think my favorite example of what I would call bad representation, or I guess going along my same lines as earlier, failed representation, the gay kiss in The Rise of Skywalker will live in my brain as a bad time for like the rest of my life. Not because there's anything wrong with it in text, like it's fine, it's there, but because what it does is it brings like the angry straight people out in droves, and they're like, one, how dare you do this? This is horrible. Get it out of my movie. And two, you know, aren't you happy now? Can't you be satisfied and stop asking for gay characters in Star Wars? Like, you guys had this. Isn't this enough for you? Like, that's always what happens. And it's giving me very like gay on Twitter, basically. Like, oh yeah, we had gays in this movie. You can see them. They're in the background. They're where your eyes will go over as we pan the camera. And that's it's just not good enough for me. I not to sound like a snob about representation in media, but it's frustrating when people will do the bare minimum and then, you know, sort of they'll get congratulations from a lot of the straight people who consume that media. And even from some queer people. Yeah, Mel just said in the chat, Disney's 14th first gay characters. It's that problem over and over and over again of, you know, haven't we done enough for you guys? And no, actually you haven't. And it's that kind of thing that frustrates me to death, especially in these big budget movies, like, or when Endgame was coming out and they were like, we're having Marvel's first explicitly gay character, and it's unnamed character that the director plays in the beginning of the movie.
Oh, I was like, who?
Yeah, no, exactly. That is the issue that I have, and it's like there was a gay person in that movie, and it's like, no, actually there wasn't. And it sends me into space. And not to bash on Loki, because it's a fine show and all, but like when they were like, he's gender fluid and bisexual, is he? In the text, maybe, but like, is it shown? Is it explored? Is it a plot point? Not exactly. And I think unsuccessful representation is when it falls into a stereotype, but I also think it's when it's the literal bare minimum. Like, either do better or don't do it at all, I guess, is the way that I would conclude my thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, you guys, you make a great point. It's hard because I don't even it's just great hearing the perspective, because like for me it would be as if it was an all white cast, and then you panned, and there was a black guy in the back, and you're like, there he is. Are you guys happy now? He's there. You see him? Let's go back. Like that's literally the the same thing. I don't know. It's really funny. Mel says, "Get your Russo out of here." No, that's awesome. I love it. All right, so what do we need? What is it that we actually need? Becca, we'll go to you first.
I was hoping I wouldn't be the first one. That's such there's so much to unpack in that simple question.
Well, don't feel like you have to do the whole thing, because we got other people to pick up the slack.
Well, because the obvious answer is just simply like more representation in general. Just because in general, Star Wars seems to be majority white, cishet, male characters, and that's a problem. Or like the female lead is a white woman with brown hair. Like, I think we need to expand past that, because we've seen the same things over and over. And we don't need to have like a queer person where being queer is their only identity, but just it being a part of their identity so that they're there. But I don't know, because there's a lot you could put into it. It's a multi-layered question, I feel like.
Okay. I love it. How about you, friend?
Yeah. I think more queer people in the writers' room in general, more queer people working on these projects. My roommate and I used to joke when we would watch Riverdale that like there was one queer person in this writer room, and sometimes they would like shove him in like a side room and not let him out, and then you can tell the episodes where they like let him out. That's a joke. I don't know who's on the writers' room of Riverdale. I'm embarrassed to admit that I've watched Riverdale. But more queer people working on these projects. I think in a lot of the shows that have really succeeded with queer representation recently, and for interesting reasons, I think like a lot of them are aimed at younger audiences and are animated shows. But I'm thinking of The Owl House and, Legend of Korra and Steven Universe, among others. There were a lot of queer people working on those shows and really fighting to include their own experiences within those shows. It's not to say that a straight person can't write a queer character. It's that a straight person will always be writing their idea of what a queer character is. Maybe they have a really good idea of that, but it's always going to be their idea of what that means, and not, their own experiences. So I think that's it. I think that's my answer.
Okay. No, that's and I'm not a theater kid myself, but I was led to believe that there was a lot of queer people that they would have to be in the writer's room. But when you watch the projects, it's clear that no one involved has any idea what's happening or what they're talking about, which, yeah, is just kind of sad. How about you, Noah?
Yeah, I mean, I guess Fern and I do share a brain cell apparently, because that was my same thought. I think the thing that I would say about writing especially is there's this concept when you're writing a narrative, just to write what you know, basically, because it comes off as more authentic. But the reality is you can't write from every experience because you can't have all of them. And I think it's important that if I want more queer writers in the writers' room, but I also want straight people to maybe try a little harder. Like if you're straight, you can write queer characters. I'm actually gonna gatekeep the concept of queerness in literature. It's not for you, but I think it's important to try and actually understand what queer experiences, plural, look like to other people, and trying to get a grasp on how that was for them, because like any identity group that exists in the margins, it changes how you interact with the world around you. And I think so often the reason that queer representation written by straight people is unsatisfying and is unsuccessful is because it lacks that perspective. It understands queerness only as a function of heteronormativity, but not actually as a lifestyle and a way that we interact with every piece of the world around us. And I think that in order for queer representation to be successful, if it's not written by a queer person, it needs to be multi-sourced. It needs to understand the history of identity. It needs to understand how identity functions today, because otherwise it's clunky and it doesn't have the reality to it that I think queer identity always has and needs to have in stories.
Yeah, that's a great point, and it's actually a fear of mine, because I want to write stories myself. I have several I've been cooking up, but like one of the things I realize is that all my favorite characters are women in everything, and so like I'm trying to write the story. I'm like, I don't feel up to the task of writing this woman protagonist. I don't know that I can do it right, and it's a pervasive fear of mine. And I think that could also be a barrier for someone who is trying to include one of these characters. What can we do? Is there, or what would you recommend we do to try and source, or anything to read to understand, or anything like that? Asking for a friend.
I mean, I don't have like I if I was better, I'd have like a laundry list of sources to go to specifically. But I would say that I would say, especially like read things by queer people and not just like their documentaries and biographies, but like fantasy stories that are written by queer people can help you understand the angle that we as a group of people sort of come from. And I think that's true of any marginalized community, because I feel like all too often when you're trying to learn about someone, you pay attention to the concrete facts of their observed reality, but not so much to like their internal experiences. And those tend to come up in queer stories by queer people. Would be my advice for definitely not you, just for somebody else.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay,
No,
I have an
you
answer
don't have
to
to raise
this
your
question.
hand. Go ahead.
I'm going to anyway. It's the second day of school, so I'm in that mindset right now. Okay, step 1, read Stone Butch Blues. Step 2, read anything else that queer people have written. Exactly what Noah was saying, you know, fantasy fiction, memoir, essays, whatever. But Stone Butch Blues is a fundamental text that I recommend everyone read at some point, especially if they're interested in just understanding queer experience. Obviously, it was published in the 90s, so it's not like directly relevant to the contemporary queer experience or anything, but definitely a good place to start.
Yeah. And then real quick, I have a comment from Combo here. Says Star Wars is a war movie / show. I understand wanting representation, but I feel like people are acting like it should be the main plot point or something. And I just wanted to address it, because no, it doesn't have to be the main plot point at all in this. But I will say that different people with different background approach things differently. So it is, if you think about, someone's paradigm, right? That's like a set of glasses. It's how you see the world. And people from different groups, be it different, um, you know, level of affluence, different racial backgrounds, or, different preferences, will see the world in a very different way, interact with the world in a very different way. So even if that's not the main focal point of the medium, of the movie, of the show, or whatever, they're still going to interact with certain decisions and choices differently. So it is an important thing to always consider. And I that's the purpose of this episode, is to try and find out what those differences are and how we can best acquaint ourselves with them. But yeah, I mean, speaking of that that comment, and sorry, no hate to combos, that seemed like a genuine question, but is there anything that you guys would want to communicate to people that say that this is forced, or like, can you keep that stuff separate, or whatever? because we do hear those comments. What if you could like put a message in their brain and like shake them and make them understand? What would you do? I'll start with can't remember who I started with last time, so I'll start with Fern this time.
I think it would be queer experience is human experience. My experience with the people I love, my experience with my own gender, that is my experience, just as, you know, someone who is straight and cisgender has their experience with who they love and with their own understanding of their gender. I think in general it can be helpful to, well, even the comment originally mentioned how Star Wars is like a war story, and saying that that is somehow that war stories and like queer stories are mutually exclusive, I think is also a very flawed idea, because it's not like people haven't, you know, had really intense emotional relationships, like queer relationships while at war. That's a part of people's experiences too. These are all things that are part of the human experience. And if you wouldn't necessarily question why a romance belongs in a story if it were a straight romance, maybe just interrogate a little bit, like, why is this rubbing you the wrong way when it's a queer romance of some kind, or an exploration of gender identity in some way.
Yeah, oh, that's fantastic. And how about you, Noah?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the same vein of that, one, I think the comment was coming from a good place, but also the first 3/6 of the Star Wars movies are wrapped around a straight romance. Like that is simply the plot. And I sort of wonder, why not a gay romance? Why is this not something that's more true to my life or someone else's life? And additionally, the concept of forced diversity, one, is an oxymoron. Like diversity is not something you can force. It literally happens by design. Like that's just how the world is. And I think that storytelling should reflect that. There's no reason that there shouldn't be queer people in a galaxy far, far away. Like that's just a reality of storytelling. And I think that we deserve to be as present as anybody else is. That's just sort of how I feel about it. And I think that when people get really up in arms about it, or when they get really upset, especially when they use like not in front of my children defense, my question is, you know, why not? What about my identity or anyone else's identity is so mind-boggling to you that it cannot be present in the media you consume?
No, I agree. I mean, I felt partially I feel that it partially comes from closeted people, because like if I see two men kiss, it's not going to make me want to go kiss a man. I don't. That's I am I crazy, or I don't see how that's going to change anyone just having it present. You know. Oh, go ahead. Were you going to say something, Noah?
Just, I find it funny. It sounds like I saw any gay characters in media when I was growing up, and I still turned out to be a homo. So, I mean, clearly that can't be that influential.
It's yeah, it's just a thing, you know. And how about you, Jess?
Yeah, like it's again like trying. Like I guess we are just would like to see it normalized. So, because we're just normal people too. So, having it in media wouldn't really change anything. I don't think. There's like a bunch of straight romances, and all of us still ended up queers, like Noah said. So, I don't know. Like I feel Fern and Noah said a lot of my thoughts too again. So.
No, actually, you said it perfectly, because like even you know in the comments saying, "Hey, the story is about a war or whatever," well, then it shouldn't matter, right? If that's not what it's about, then the side stuff shouldn't matter or affect the story or whatever, right? Yeah, I just
Yeah, like Han and Leia's romances and like didn't really affect the main story of the original trilogy either. So any other, if there was like a queer romance, I don't think it would really affect anything.
Yeah,
if done right.
absolutely. And Element said, "What I'm lacking is an editor, Miss Aggie, who is just the best. She's the best person. Edits his stuff. I did have her look into some of my stuff as well, but yeah, I think that could really make a huge difference." Cal 4 here says, "I completely agree with Noah. People exist in their lives, in our lives already. They deserve to be a part of our stories as well." It's so simple. It's so simple. It's painful. You know, forced diversity isn't forced. Lack of diversity is. And then, yes, looks like everyone is a war in the stars. So I love the people we get here in in the chat. It's always a great conversation. How about you, Becca?
Well, because I remember when I started posting like queer Star Wars content, especially during Pride Month, I was posting like LGBTQ headcanons, and I remember the one video I posted like blew up, and I got so many like homophobic Star Wars fans in my comments, and I like didn't want to engage with them. I'm like totally unbothered, but at the same time I was like, why does it matter so much? But it just shows that being queer is still not considered a norm. We're still like, it's still considered like other. And I even like had a couple days ago, I posted a ship video, and someone was basically saying like, why does it matter? Like, Star Wars isn't like this, isn't what Star Wars is. I'm like, first of all, what does that even mean? Second of all, like, just because you don't think that's what Star Wars is doesn't mean that that's going to be the same experience for someone else. Like, when I see people fighting so hard about it, I'm like, you clearly have, you're either just super homophobic or you're just ignorant and you don't know. Because sometimes like people just seriously don't know. They're like, hey, why is this a thing? But I've like had people telling me like, so like I've gotten so many, I'm sure everyone here probably has a similar experience. I've gotten so many hate comments, and I'm like, why are you so angry by a gay person existing? Like, I just like, if I want to say that like Obi-Wan is pansexual, who cares? It doesn't change anything about his character. But some people get so homophobic that they just see a huge problem. Like, well, that's my favorite character. And people have said, well, I headcanon all of these characters are straight. I'm like, good for you. Congratulations. Like, I don't care. That's the great thing about headcanons, is that it's canon in my brain, and that's all that matters. But I think people just need to be more open-minded. I think a lot of people are still very closed-minded to the idea of gay people existing in something that they love. Like, some people will be like, I just can't see gay people in Star Wars. I'm like, why not? Gay people exist in real life. Why wouldn't they exist in Star Wars? Straight people exist in Star Wars. Cisgender people exist in Star Wars. Why can't everyone else?
I mean, we all saw Jabba's palace and the Twilight dancing around. Like, I'm just saying, if you can find that interesting, then all bets are off, right? I don't know. What were you gonna say, Noah?
Becca, literally, I had the same experience. I made a post about like Omega being trans about an episode of The Bad Batch, and I was like flooded with comments of people that were like, "How dare you?" And I was like, "Besties, this isn't even canon. Like, this is just a thing I thought was a nice idea." And I wondered. I always had the same thought. I was like, "Why does this frustrate you so much?" And I think it's the same thing that frustrates anybody when we talk about representation of race, of sexuality, of gender, which is that it's coming to the realization, especially from cishet white men, that this story is not for you, I think is a really hard pill for some people to swallow. And I think that straight people, specifically in the same way that white people feel this way, are not always capable of relating to characters that are not a one-to-one comparison of them. And I think that's why people are so abrasive to the concept of like solid representation in any piece of media and in any form. Because if this narrative isn't about me, I don't know how to pay attention to it. I think that's sort of like the feeling some people have.
No, that's solid. I mean, I always headcanon it as they're kind of like General Hux, where they're both gay and homophobic at the same time.
Get General Hux out of here. I can't do this today. I won't.
That reminded me, I wanted to say this for bad representation too, and I thought of it later, but some more bad representation is, why are all these Imperials the queer characters? There's so many queer Imperials that I'm just like, why are you making the fascists queer? Please reevaluate.
Diversity win. The person who fired the Death Star is a homosexual.
It's true, but it also, I mean, I feel like it's partly playing into the tropes of like, this person is not macho and a hero for punching people with their fists. They're like, thoughtful and intelligent and articulate, so they have to be the gay character. And you're like, but you don't have to do that. I don't know. No, it's just I don't know. It's just it's just a whole fascinating phenomenon. The thing I always like to say is it's like being right-handed versus being left-handed. If you're left-handed and you go into Guitar Center and the guitar you really want to play is actually left-handed, you're stoked. Like finally something I can, because I can't touch 90% of the stuff in there. But if you're right-handed and you walked in and the guitar you really want is left-handed, you're pissed. What is this? Why does that exist? Who wants this? And you're like, but the difference is it's not 10%, and even if it was, it shouldn't matter. Not in this sense. And I think we are still stuck in this industrial mindset where factories would crank out stuff for the fattest part of the bell curve, and that's cishet white. But we don't have to do that anymore. We got 3D printers. We can be our own factories. And I realize my example is getting off the rails, but you understand where I'm going and what I'm saying. All right, so Becca, you started mentioning headcanons. I'm curious what all of your guys' unconfirmed headcanons are. And I mean, feel free to, do what y'all do. I think did I start with Noah last time?
You started with Fern last time, but you started with me, I think, like twice.
So okay. I try to go around. I'm gonna start with Jess and hear if Jess has any headcanons.
Okay. Welcome to my TED Talk about Thrawn and Eli Vanto.
The way I knew it was going to be them the second it was your turn.
All right, I'm getting buckled in. Hold on. All right. Let's go.
There's just a lot in the first Thrawn book, especially between the two of them. Like Thrawn's, is that in the second chapter, I think, where he tells Eli that it's important for him to be his translator, and like how he holds his words in his hands. I'm just like, I'm sorry, that is not a thing a straight man would say to his other straight man friend. Like, that was like Thrawn basically telling Eli, hey, I just met you, but I'm in love with you, and I'm taking you with me everywhere we go from now on. And the fact at the end of the Thrawn books, he gives Eli his journal, and that specific passage about a friend being out there in the galaxy. It's like, so long as you're remembered by a friend, they're never truly forgotten. And just like, that also is not something a straight man would say to his other straight man friend. But I don't know, I could just be projecting a lot onto that. That's one of my biggest headcanons, is Thrawn and Eli, though.
I think this may be my favorite comment of all time. Eli Vanto, the brown gay space cowboy of Thrawn's dreams. Uh,
There's
he-
also the fact
there's
that in the Thrawn book, literally Eli's like, the only way you get to do that, or sorry, the only way you get to do that is if you were an admiral. And Thrawn's like, guess I gotta become an admiral then. Like he literally in that moment is like, okay, if you say so.
and several times Eli is going to like leave, and then he looks and he's like, I can't seem to quit you. I have Expert Gamers Co says, I just met you. This is crazy, but I don't know language, so translate maybe.
What's so funny though is that there's evidence of Thrawn like knowing Basic pretty well because of him meeting Anakin in alliances and can perfectly communicate with Anakin in Basic. But then in Thrawn is like, yeah, no, I need a translator. I need this specific space country boy to be my translator from now on. Thanks.
And St. Pat picks up on that as well. It says, yes, Josh pops in and says, I'm popping in for a bit. I'm on my lunch break. Glad to be here while Jess is spreading the word about Trento. I love it. I love it. How about you, Becca?
First, I just want to say we love the Thrawn and Eli agenda. It's everything to me, and I'm so glad that they were mentioned first because they are the blueprint. But another one, the big one for me is Kalazeb. I love them. They live in my head rent free. I'm just saying, the Honorable Ones is the gayest Star Wars episode I've ever seen in my entire life. Who gives another man a space rock and that man goes and keeps it while he's sitting yearning in his bunk or whatever? Like, I'm sorry, but there's no way that they were straight. And in the end, Zeb literally takes him to Lyrasan's like, hey, look, you can stay here. You can live with, like, that was basically their wedding. They were basically just giving their wedding vows. Like, that's it. But they're like my favorites. And I've seen people say, well, they're just buddies. I'm like, no. Like, I know it's a headcanon, but it's canon. Like, they're too gay they're just too gay. And I don't understand if you see them as straight. I just don't get it. It doesn't click in my brain. It just doesn't.
How many of your buddies are you like, hey, we should go meet my parents?
Exactly. Like, well, that's just like Flix and Orca in Star Wars Resistance. They were like, yeah, we're going over to my mom's house. I'm like, that's gay. That's gay.
So you guys are just funny people, and I love you all. I'll just say that right away. Fern, what's in your head canon?
Okay, I'm gonna attempt to show you guys a picture. I don't know if this will work. Can't really see it. It's Darth Vader, and he's holding a pride flag, and it says Star Wars is gay, all of it. And that's how I feel, with a few limited exceptions. Like Sheev is not a member of the community. However,
no, that would be Sheev is not a member of any community. And Sheev is not even allowed to be Ace. I don't know where he falls. He just is.
Is that the RuPaul's banner? I have had this saved to my phone for about 4 years now.
It is our Twitter banner on our official Twitter page.
I'm obsessed with that. Anyway, I mean, I have a long list of headcanons, but one of the ones that's very near and dear to my heart is that Ahsoka Tano is a lesbian, and I have talked about this at length in a few other places, so I'll spare you guys for right now. But same with Sabine Wren, and I think, you know, if we get the chance to explore that a little bit for both of them in the Ahsoka show, that would be wonderful. I don't think that they should like be in a relationship, for the record. I think that there's a bit of an age gap there that might make things complicated. Also, it's not something I would personally want to see, but
I thought if there are two lesbians, they automatically should be together.
Now you're right.
Isn't that how media works?
You're right about that. Well, you're right. Hang on. I'm gonna have to rethink this whole thing because I did forget about that. But yeah, those are the two off the top of my head. Oh, also Omega is trans for sure. Like I think Omega is a trans femme, non-binary individual, and I'm so proud of her.
I laugh so hard at like how many theories there were about how Omega could be a female, and no one said, "Oh, she's trans." like, like the regular one that would like apply here, like now, they're like, "Oh no, it's because of just like with Wolverine, it was the Y chromosome that got damaged during the cloning process, and so her mutation was that." And like, there's a okay, you have one character that could shoot anything at any time, another one that can feel the magnetic pull of whatever, one that's so strong that he can lift up like starships, and then like, and a trans girl, like, no, that's not realistic. No way.
Oh, I have one more because I think it's a little bit, it's not as common of an interpretation, but I believe in it very strongly. I believe that Hera Syndulla is trans. I have reasons for believing this that I can unpack at a later time and date, but right now I just want to say I think Hera Syndulla is trans.
Oh no, I went back to season 1. I know exactly why you think that. The Ryloth arc, yeah, you can, you know. Oh Jesus, I'm sorry, you just blew my mind there because Thrawn grabs a Calicori and says this indicates that you at one time had a little brother, but if that was her. Okay,
Another
sorry.
thing
You're hurting my heart right now.
In the original like renderings for Hera without her helmets on, she has like regular human ears, which only male Twi'leks have. So that was something that they changed later when they made different models for her as a character. But that was the first time I saw the trans interpretation, just as like a fun headcanon, and it's become something I very deeply believe ever since.
Wow. Okay. I need to evaluate some stuff, but I'll be DMing you later. How about you, Noah?
I do like that trans Hera is what Fern used to break Chaco's brain in half. That's very entertaining to me. I mean, I feel like we're sharing one brain cell right now because literally everything that's listed. Yeah, I will say Thranto became like oddly like near and dear to my heart. Which is weird because I mean, I saw Thrawn and Rebels and I was like, oh, cool. And then I read the Thrawn book and I was like, not to be dramatic, but I would kill for you. And those two, like they do just like have a place in my brain. I will say I am an avid proponent of Cody One, which is Commander Cody and Obi-Wan. And there's like very little in text to support that as like a thing. And I don't care about that. I just relate to them both very strongly. And I have decided that they're a couple. That said, I will say that the couple that I have like the most quote unquote evidence for is definitely Finn and Poe in the entire sequel trilogy. Half because both of those actors were like, yeah, we played it as a relationship. Like, just to be clear, we definitely did that. But I remember seeing it in the first movie and like the way that they hug at the end, I was like, they're not friends. This is definitely fruity. Like that was the energy that I pulled from the two of them. And I loved that very, very much to see that relationship. I do wish it had been canonized, but like I can dream. I think the thing about my headcanons about queer characters is that like I don't know why Cody and Obi-Wan are so appealing to me as like they're just two homos against the world. Like that's sort of how I've categorized them in my brain. But I think the reason I like them and Thranto so much is like the inherent homoeroticism that is military relationships. Something about like two men in a military construct is very gay to me. And I think that's very powerful.
Yeah. Not sure.
Look, you're so right. You're so correct. That's literally the plot of that movie. I do feel like the entire plot of The Force Awakens is just Poe being like, I really want you to wear my jacket so people know that we're a couple.
and then Mel says Lorna D is a lesbian. Changed my mind. I feel like okay, but would that one be follow all of the negative stereotypes? where it would be someone who is like came from a wealthy family on Hosnian Prime, but they didn't accept me, so I became tough and out on the outer rim, and a villain. I don't know. I'm trying to learn here, but it felt like.
I mean, I don't know. My chaotic headcanon is that Marcion, Mark, him. The idea of him as a gay man is very funny to me. That's all I think about sometimes.
Okay, so if I had I guess my headcanons would be that Luke, just like his mother, is bisexual. I mean,
yes.
I feel like that's low-hanging fruit, to be quite honest. I don't know if you've seen any of the deleted scenes between Luke and Biggs. There's a deleted scene with them on Tatooine, and you're like, okay, they're embracing each other a lot. They're holding each other very close. Luke is obviously the femme here, and like something's happened. Something's happened. Also, sorry, just had to put someone in timeout real quick. If when reading the books about Luke's mom, Padme, I mean, there's something there with Sabe. I mean, for sure. Definitely for sure on Sabe's side. I don't know if it was a mutual thing. There's stuff cooking. It feels weird to me that everyone looks the same, but I don't know. I mean, if I can get behind Silky, then I can get behind anything. It don't matter. Love is love, right? Okay, so on that, if you could change the orientation of anyone in Star Wars, I gotta ask, who are you changing? This one I'm going to Becca first.
Tarkin. Tarkin.
Wait, we had the same answer.
Why was he made the gay one? It could have been you could have made Thrawn like a canon queer person, and I would be like, great, amazing. But no, you made Tarkin, because there's not a lot of like queer people in Star Wars, so that's a very short list to pick from if you're talking about like that. But if straight, well, I would change Han Solo because I don't think he's straight, but I would say he's bisexual. But Tarkin, like I don't understand why that happened, why that's a thing. I guess he's our gay elder now, and we have to accept it, and that's it.
he's the problematic old guy that's like, you like go back in the attic, Grandpa, and he's like, oh, these people taking our jobs. And you're like, oh, Jesus Christ. No, I like that. And also I like what you said about Han, because like there's a couple moments like in A New Hope where there's like a weird, like a scene is just shot weird with like he's gonna tell Luke something and then just doesn't, and you're like, is he yearning? Like, is that what this is supposed to be? Like, what are you trying to tell me? I don't know. Fern, how about you? You can switch anyone.
Okay, so I take my little gay gun. I don't know what this is. And I aim it at Anakin Skywalker. I also had canon Anakin as bi. I know that that's a controversial take among many Star Wars fans. But I take it and I point it at him and I go boop boop boop. And now he's a gay man, and I think Star Wars is going to end a lot happier for like everyone. And so that's the change I'm going to make today.
Maybe that's why Star Wars is so sad, is he was never able to explore what he was supposed to. and he just went all rage monster on everyone. Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to process that more as well. But how about you, Noah? Who would you change?
I do love the idea, as Mel said, of Fern decanonizing the original trilogy by making Anakin gay. That's very funny to me. I don't. I was gonna say Tarkin to like save the gay people in Star Wars by freeing our community of him, but I, I would say that I think I would make Django gay. We don't have a confirmed sexuality for him, but I would either do that or I would take Fern's little gay ray gun and I would shoot Padme with it so she just becomes a lesbian and we're like problem solves. Like if Anakin is gay and Padme is a lesbian, Star Wars as a whole is saved. Like I have
They'd be besties. They would be such
they
good
would be
friends.
besties. I love the idea of them as like platonic, like the gay and the lesbian allies that are just like, what if we? No, we would never.
I love it. Cal always shipped Luke and Biggs. Amel says lesbian Arlani. I mean, I'm just waiting for that. Sub is literally like, you hold my heart in your hands and I will follow you until my death. Yeah, that's for sure. Does anyone read Qui-Gon as Ace? I read Qui-Gon as Pan personally. I think he would. I think if it moves, he's he's into it. Palpatine seems pretty asexual. Look about how he went about getting offspring. He never even considered for a second. He's like, okay, so I need offspring. Let's get our best scientists in here, and we're like, don't you want to like do what? Like, never mind. Let's bring scientists. Let's. Padme and Annie queer co-parenting. Love that. I always love these like I always love the headcanons because some of these obviously would just shake the foundations of everything. But then I think that like let's say Django was Pan. Then all bets would be off for all of the clones, like for forever, and that would just be a hilarious potential situation going on. I don't know. But yeah, and I'm sorry, Jess, did I get yours? Okay, Jess.
No. I don't know, because everyone has taken like some of the most iconic answers that I probably would have come up with too. But I guess if since it's not actually like canon, like Thrawn being queer, I am now canonizing Thrawn being queer for Eli Vanto.
Yeah, it's out there. What's funny is I never actually considered it, but like after hearing the explanations, like no, there's some, there's some stuff to this for sure. Okay. Now I have another question. This can be just a lightning round, but it's inspired by Mel, who said this comment: Elzar Stellan, Avar Polycule. Which I actually think is the best answer for this in all of Star Wars canon. But any Polycule love for you guys?
Yes.
I mean that one, yeah.
Yeah, that one's pretty up there. I will also plug the Syndulla Hauser polycule from the Bad Batch.
Wait,
they had something going on. There was something happening there. I will die on this hill.
I mean, I could see that. Like, where you going, Hauser? Oh, I'm going to the Syndullas for dinner. Like, just don't worry about it, dude. You're not gonna eat at the barracks with us? No. I saw you eating. Why are you going over there? Man, stay in your lane.
You just having a good time.
Yeah. Any more polycules?
With the High Republic polycule with Avar and Elzar and Stellan, I do like to think of it as like that scene from Parks and Rec where it's just like Avar being like, "Oh, this is my boyfriend Elzar, and this is his boyfriend Stellan."
Yeah, it's very important to me that Stellan and Avar are not dating. Elzar is like the V of that polycule, I think.
He is the
Like,
bridge between the two of them.
right. I mean, obviously, Avar and Stellan, are quite close, I think, but it's very important to me that that is how that relationship functions. Maybe Avar and Stellan have like a queer platonic thing going on.
All right. Well, I am glad I asked. Okay, so starting to get to where we're wrapping up. I gotta ask if you could greenlight any Star Wars project, like anything that you can conceive of is going to be made, whether it's a video game, a comic, a book, a movie, TV show, whatever. What would you have them? What would you have them make? And I will go to Fern first.
Well, keeping in the theme of the evening, so this is a short story anthology called All Out. It is a queer YA short story anthology. There are 2 other books in the same series. This one's all historical fiction. The second one is all contemporary fiction. The last one is sci-fi. So something in that nature, a short story anthology of queer stories from the galaxy, I think would be really wonderful. And it could be by a single author and be a collection, or it could be an anthology. Either way, I think that would be like a really wonderful way to explore, as we've just discussed, what it's actually like to be queer in the galaxy and provide a little of that representation that we're missing.
I love it. I started to chuckle because Mel said visions, but it's gay. No, that'd be super interesting. I haven't heard that before, and I like that a lot. How about you, Noah?
I mean, I'm wielding like infinite power here, which is kind of a lot. I not super like a queer story, but I do really want to see either a show or actually probably a comic, because I really do just want more comic books in the world. But I want to see a Jedi that lives through Order 66 and has to seriously question what it even means to be a Jedi. And just sort of and Kanan sort of does that in Rebels, but I want more like immediacy to it, because I am absolutely fascinated by the way that the Jedi perceive themselves, especially between like the High Republic era. That's what I love reading about it, is the way that the Jedi see themselves then versus like any other period of time. So I want to see that. I want to see a Jedi really ask what it even means to be a practicing Jedi and see how they deal with that.
Okay, now I've never wanted anything more in my entire life. I mean, I need to see your story played out specifically through Quinlan Vos, who was a Jedi master, who fell in love. He fell to the dark side. He lost the love of his life and was a broken person, then became a Jedi again. And then they just sent him back off into war. And he's mentioned in a line of dialogue in episode 3 of like, oh yeah, we sent that. And then Order 66 happens. We know he survives. But like, if anyone is to question what it means to be a Jedi, and what the light side means versus the dark side, and what love means and how love changes a person or would affect a Jedi, it would be Quinlan Vos. And that story needs to be told for sure.
I will fight Dave Filoni physically for a Quinlan Vos like full comic or TV show following him after Order 66. So I'm free in the parking lot of Chili's at 3 in the morning today. If he wants to come meet me, I will do that.
And that's why Quinlan, both me and Element 7, every single show that happens, we're like, okay, what's going to happen in season 2? Quinlan Vos is going to show up, and like every single what's going to happen in season? Quinlan Vos is going to show up. I don't know how old he would be then, but like he's still around. Like I don't know.
Quinlan Vos is the Mephisto of the Star Wars universe.
Absolutely, I wouldn't have it any other way. How about you, Jess? What would you be bringing into the Star Wars universe?
There's like 2 things that like came to mind. One is I'd like Timothy Zahn to write a book about Eli Vanto searching for Thrawn. Like, I'd like to see what's going on there in the future, because as much as I love the Ascendancy books that are coming out right now, I do worry about Eli, and I also am wondering where the heck Thrawn and Ezra are in the universe. So an Eli Vanto book would mean a lot to me, but also I'm a big fan of Cody, and throughout this entire season of The Bad Batch, I have been asking, where is Cody? So, like a comic or show or something about Cody and what he's doing during all of this post-Order 66 stuff would be good. Seeing him deal with the fact that he did shoot his good friend Obi-Wan would hurt, but I think it would be interesting. So that's what I want to see.
Yeah, hopefully we see them run into each other in Kenobi, in Obi-Wan. Sorry. Wait, is it Obi-Wan or is it Kenobi? I get
Obi-Wan
confused.
Kenobi, I think, right?
Wait,
Is his full
is
name?
it the show?
The show, yeah,
The
cool.
show is called Kenobi. I would love if it was just Obi-Wan, though. That'd be very funny.
Okay, I get confused because, like, also the John Jackson Miller book was also just called Kenobi, right?
I'm
And
pretty
this-
sure the show is Obi-Wan Kenobi, like the full name, but people have just been calling it Kenobi because the old book, the Legends book.
Hey, as long as we get Plug Eye, the one-eyed warrior woman from the Sand People in there, I'm happy. It was made canon, and from a certain point of view, so she better be in it. I don't know. That's what I'm thinking.
I would like to briefly plug Julia's concept of Cody and Corky on like a stepson bonding vacation, because that's extremely funny to me, and I would watch that.
I would love that as well. Oh, and then sorry, it says Quinlan Vos shows up. Said you might need help in his skiff named Ventress. That would be amazing. And oh man, there's a bunch of really good ones. I need to see an Ahsoka Eli team up for the show to find him. That would be incredible. Absolutely. As what you were mentioning, Cody and Corky on a stepson bonding vacation. And not someone. I just picture that same vacation, sort of. Only it's like an old guy named like Jeff, and he's teaching him how to run the Cinnabon. He's like training him. Yeah, I'm just saying. And Jess? No, I started with Jess, right? Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that. I was trying to start with a different person each round so no one takes all the good answers, but it all so it's not the same, but I have to mention it every chance I could possibly get. Awesome. Thank you guys
really
so
quickly.
much.
Becca, did you go?
Yeah.
I don't.
Becca.
No, I dissociated for a second, so I didn't say anything. But I love Jedi Fallen Order. And I love Trilla Siduri. She's one of my all-time favorite characters, even though she only has 13 minutes of like actual scenes in the game. I'm not bitter about it. I always want to say I headcanon her as a lesbian just because. But I would love to see a book written from her perspective. Like, I know that in the game we get her perspective of how she becomes the second sister, but I would love to read like how she feels about being betrayed and how she navigates being in the Empire up until Vader, does the thing. Because there was so much about her character I feel like I didn't get to see because it was from Cal's point of view. And I'm assuming in the second game we're not going to really like get much. Sierra might mention her, but we're not going to really get much about her character. So I want to see more about Trilla because she deserved, like, she was just about to get redeemed. And then Vader was like, no, we're not letting that happen. Because Star Wars is, we kill you off before or after you get redeemed, and that's what happens. I would just like to see something from her point of view because her character is so interesting, and just seeing her perspective as someone who survived Order 66 but in a different way. I would love to see how the Inquisitors were treated more often because we don't get that much about them. Like we see them in Rebels and stuff, but not in a lot of detail.
Yeah.
Also, talk about like pure terror when Vader like jumps down from that platform, and I was like, "Oh, this is it for me, huh? Like this is really the end." But yeah, could you just like do me a favor and like write a Trilla book because I will read it right now. Like I need more about her.
Okay, so straight up, I'm playing the game, and I'm like trying to fight this sister, and then she takes off the helmet, and I was like, I dropped my control. I was like, what? Do we have to fight? I mean, all right, who's the mocap actor? Don't act like y'all didn't look it up.
No,
as soon as you saw her, you're like,
I'm exclusively attracted to men. However, Trilla, I just also her like whole eyeliner moment. I was like, I like that she did her makeup and then put her helmet on afterwards. Like that's some good forethought on her part.
I do it for me. that's what she said, you know, and I approve. I approve of that. Oh man, no, I love it. Now, all right, so I'm gonna run off on a tangent, but when I come out of it, I gotta find out who everyone's Eli Vanto fan cast is. So hopefully this is going to give you like a little bit of time. But no, in all seriousness though, I need more of that crew. Like the found family trope is so strong in Star Wars, and I for some reason resonated more with that crew than I ever thought I would with anyone with and just like trying to pick up plants to make the pilot happy and just walking around the ship trying to catch little bits of like random dialogue. I don't know, I think they really killed it with that. I will be devastated if I don't get a sequel to that game. And I need to explore Cal's relationship with that Night Sister because I don't know, it's weird, but I don't know, I'm into it. But I will I just go around, jump out when it comes to you. Who would you fan cast as Eli Vanto? Does anyone have anything?
I don't follow male actors like that. so I'll just see a picture, like I'll see stuff on like Star Wars Twitter and someone be like fan casting someone, like, great, perfect, I agree.
All right. Well, so I have had a fan cast of him for a while, so I wanted to give everyone a second, but if not, that's totally cool. I fan cast Taylor Kitsch as Eli Vanto, and Taylor Kitsch looks like this is Taylor Kitsch. I'm picturing this guy. Yeah, he played Gambit in that terrible Origins movie, but I'm seeing him as my Eli Vanto. I don't know what you guys think. Any thoughts? You guys for or against?
I don't know. Mel has greatly like wormed into my brain the idea of like indigenous Eli Vanto, or like at least him like being a person of color is very stuck in my brain. The problem is I also like everything animated, so I'm like, just draw him and then we'll be good to go. Like that's where my brain sits with that. My fan cast for Eli Vanto is just someone to draw him really nicely.
That's very true. So let's go live action Cal. I think you already have the actor. You better bring him in at some point in time.
There was a post a long time ago that I saw that was like, I think Cameron Monaghan would be like a great casting for Cal, and I'm like, okay. moving right along. Like, we'll just jump past that.
In their defense, they are not wrong. They are not wrong, and that's a win, I guess. I'm being told to look up Shervin Alanabi. So I will pull that really quick and see what you guys think as this Thrawn. I mean, not Thrawn, but Eli Vanto.
We
This
have to
I can see.
consider.
Yes.
Will he look good next to Thrawn? We have to as long as the fan cast looks good next to Thrawn. Wonderful, amazing.
And Element 7 and I have the same fan cast, at least for young Thrawn, which is Dan Stevenson, who you might know from. I know him from. Oh my goodness, he's Professor Xavier's son. Oh man, okay, never mind. It's escaping me, but. No, not any of these guys. Oh.
I was like, these are very interesting Thrawn fan casts.
It looks so good there. What are you talking about?
No, Daniel. I guess I don't know how to spell his name properly, but he's from. He's in Downton Abbey as well. He was the Beast from Beauty, the live action Beauty and the Beast, but when he became a human. Dan Stevens. That's.
I will say the other funniest Thrawn fan cast, and there was a poster somebody like made on Twitter months ago, and they were like, "I propose Robert Downey Jr. as Thrawn," and it was by far like the most cursed image I've ever seen in my entire life, and it has not left my brain since.
When people were talking about that, I hated it more than anything I could possibly think of. I think most people hear Thrawn and they think, "Oh, Space Sherlock," but he's not Sherlock though. It's not a 1-to-1. Okay, actually got it. Okay, so this is Dan Stevenson, but I was picturing him as like a young Thrawn, like when he first joined.
I can see that. I mean, it's better than the smorgasbord of stock images that came up of the show.
That was kind of wild when it came up. A lot of weird old hairless men. It was grotesque. Anyhow, also I want there to be in the latest like animation from Disney about the High Republic, I posted it myself about Wayseekers. They mentioned one of them that became a singing sensation on Alderaan. I need that to just be Prince. I need it to just be Prince. Like in design and everything. I think that would be the most wonderful thing ever. And I need a story to just go through that person's lives. I don't know. That's my thing. But awesome. I appreciate all of you guys coming on. I learned a lot, and I'm still trying to learn more. So I appreciate you guys, helping me along with that journey. Yeah, let's just go around one last time and talk about, if you guys have any final thoughts, anything that you would like other people to hear. But again, where can we find you and all your awesome content? And yeah, I will go to Jess first.
Okay, so final thought for me is because now Fern reminded me of that image, even though it is RuPaul's Pod Race Twitter's banner, but all of Star Wars is gay, and it's gay because I say so. But yeah, those are my final thoughts. And again, yeah, you can find me at Kawaii Jessio on TikTok or Twitter, and that's like KAWAII JESSYO, Kawaii Jessio. And I'm also one of the co-hosts on RuPaul's Pod Race. If you want to look up that podcast, it is a queer Star Wars podcast. So that's it. That's me.
Awesome. Definitely look it up. It's hilarious, and you'll love it if you love Star Wars. Also, one of the other hosts, Claudia, says Jedi Prince is so powerful, but Jedi Janelle Monáe. Damn, I didn't even think about that. I'm sure.
That's my ideal Star Wars show right there. I would watch that.
And Becca, any final thoughts and where we can find you and your content?
I want to say that Star Wars is for everyone. It's not just for straight, cisgendered, white men. It's for everyone because it's just like everyone says, it's just fantasy, it's war. I'm like, exactly. So it can be for anyone. So us wanting to see queer characters isn't asking for a lot. And I feel like if people just open up their minds a bit more, they'll maybe start to understand. Some people won't because they just don't want to understand. But if you're willing to do the work, then I think you'll be surprised. Because I used to be like, oh, being gay is weird. And then I came out. And because I had internalized homophobia. And then I came out, I'm like, oh. But for anyone out there who is in the LGBTQ community and you've been, seeing what the Star Wars, like what the toxic fans have been saying, just know that you're valid and there are people that support you. And there are a lot of us who have the same or similar experiences as you. And with that being said, that was heavy, but you can find me on TikTok at Becca Shea, BeckahShaye. I have a link tree. You can click on that if you want to find me anywhere else.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Also, if you guys wouldn't mind also typing your socials that you want me to put in this video in the private chat, that would be awesome because it saves me from having to rewind and re-listen to things so I can type it correctly. That's super awesome. How about you, Fern?
Yeah, my final thoughts are also that Star Wars is gay, all of it. But more seriously, Star Wars is a story that is sort of expanding and branching out infinitely at this point. And there is so much room for queer stories in that infinity. So we should get more stories like that. Thank you so much for having me on. It was a pleasure as always. You can find me at Always Fern on TikTok. And I have a podcast with my wonderful friend Julia Christine 77 called Star Wars English Class, where we talk about Star Wars and English. And we actually just put out an episode on queer coding a few weeks ago. So if you want to hear more of my thoughts on all of this, you should listen to that episode. We also have a TikTok and a Twitter at Swinglish Class.
Yes, definitely listen to them and follow Julia Christine 77 as well. If you don't want to follow her, just say Corky Kenobi 3 times and she will find you. And that'll help so you don't have to go looking. How about you, Noah?
I mean, I have this pretty much the same final thoughts as everybody, which is that Star Wars is gay because I said so, which has been something I've been saying on the internet for a hot minute now. And if that is a problem for you, I just don't care. Fight me. It's not an issue. I like gay Star Wars. I'm going to keep liking gay Star Wars for as long as I'm alive. And thank you for having me on here. My socials are my TikTok is the Jewish Jedi, and I do have a Twitter, but I tweet most often from the official RuPaul's Pod Race Twitter account, where I like to cause a lot of problems. So if you see a particularly chaotic tweet from our account, it may or may not have been me. Just be aware of that fact. But thank you so much for having me on here. It was a really great time, and I love discussing this stuff with you guys. And to plug that episode of Star Wars English Class, the queer theory one is literally fantastic. Like it lives in my brain rent free.
Awesome. I am a little behind. I have a lot of Star Wars podcasts that I listen to nowadays, but I will be jumping onto that as soon as possible because, to be quite honest, I have a hard time not inviting Fern on. So no, thank you guys. Also, all of you guys are welcome to come on again. And also, and I know I picked 2 people from the RuPaul's podcast. And I will get all the other members on at some point if I can. Claudia, when we do Resistance, you are the first person I'm coming to, because it does not get enough love. It really doesn't. Season 2, I watched in one night because it was so compelling to me. Like it was. I don't know why it gets the hate, But anyways, thank everyone for coming out and spending this time, especially everyone else here in the chat. Appreciate the support. This community has been amazing and, quite frankly, helped me through a crazy last year. So I appreciate all of you. Thank you so much, and may the force be with you always.